This is Survival of the Fittest, and for this lesson, students will continue in their role as ecologists for our Winter Ecology series, and they will be investigating the effects of getting enough energy in the winter or not getting enough energy in the winter of 4 different predators that stay active in the winter: the red-tailed hawk, the bobcat, the coyote, and the least weasel. The outcomes of this lesson should be that the students will be able to name the 4 predators and talk about some of the hardships they might face in getting enough energy in the winter. And they should be able to name at least 5 different effects that a lack of enough energy will have on an animal in the winter, or could have on an animal in the winter. And the last thing that they should be able to do is predict the effects of a severe winter on the size of an animal population. So they're not only learning about the effects of energy needs on individual animals, but also on the population as a whole. This is an example of a board that you might set up for this lesson. It was really artsy. You would draw a little muscle man right here because he's the fittest. So these are the materials that you're going to need for your lesson. Most of these will be set up outside. You will have an overhead where you can show the setup for the game. And on one side, you have the blue poker chips, and on the other side, you have all the red poker chips. In the middle of the field, you're going to have your 4 students who are going to represent predators, and their stomachs, which are the white buckets, will be on the edges of the field. All of the prey, which will be about 6 to 8 students who are not predators, will start on the resting line with 1 blue chip. Their goal is to get over to the feeding line and exchange their blue chip for a red chip, which represents food. In the middle of the field, you're going to have 2 or 3 hula hoops, which will represent brush piles, which are safe cover for the prey. Now, if they're anywhere else in this field, the predator could tag a prey, and the prey would have to give up one of its red poker chips. And at the end of each round, you add up how many M's, how many R's, and how many D's each predator has. Now, in round 3, things get a little different. You have to tell the story of a great blizzard in which 2 feet of snow fall on Suez, and this is going to hinder, of course, the activity of some of your animals, specifically the bobcat and the coyote. And to represent that, each of the coyote and the bobcat will get a crate that they have to now carry around on their foot and make them much harder for them to catch prey. And you'll do the same thing on round 4 for the hawk, and in that round the story is that the temperatures warm up a little bit and the snow starts to melt a little bit on the top, but then you get freezing rain, so you get a nice layer of ice on top of the snow. And welcome back to the wilderness room. It's time to analyze our data. So you can look at the field data that you collected, and you can explain to the students what the M, R, and D mean: mouse, rabbit, and deer. And then you're going to have the students split up into 4 groups, 1 group for each predator, and you're going to take these data and record them onto this sheet, which you can use to add up your weekly totals. And after they have done that, they can put that on a graph. So this is the one for the bobcat. The graph will look like this, and you can put these on, each one on the overhead, so the whole class can see what happened for each animal. Now the blue line is already on this paper, and it shows the energy required for each animal each week. And you can see that here in week 3, it had a higher energy requirement because it had to spend more energy getting its food because of the heavy snowfall that week. The black line then is the numbers that we graphed from the data sheet. Now, you can take this a step further, and you want to take this a step further and graph the accumulated energy requirements for each animal. You can add up for each week the amount of energy or points that each predator got. And we can see that when we graph this, the bobcat did survive because it ended up above the blue thriving line. And it did have some trouble here in the middle. The red line would represent kind of the minimum energy requirements. But because it was able to get a lot of food the last week, it kind of balanced that out. An example of an animal that might have died would look more like this. This is for the coyote. And you can see that it tried to catch up the second week, but then it just couldn't make it. It was below this minimum energy requirements line here, so it may have died or it may have, not been able to reproduce. So after you talk about all of the graphs for an individual animal, you want to talk about what would happen to a whole population of those animals and get your students to answer those questions as well. So once again, at the end of Survival of the Fittest, your students should be able to explain to you, or anyone else for that matter, the 4 different predators that you talked about and some hardships they might face in the winter with meeting their energy needs. They should be able to name at least 5 consequences for an animal of not meeting its energy needs, and they should be able to predict the effects of severe weather on an entire animal population.